afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. This is National Library Week and we've chosen today to spotlight the powerful and positive impact that libraries and librarians have on our lives. In Vermont, libraries are often the focal point of the community, and the librarians inside are a wealth of knowledge for young and old. So our program this afternoon features two Vermont librarians. They are each going to review several books, and at the end of the program I'll tell you how you can get a free list of the books that they're about to recommend. It's a pleasure to welcome back Amy Howlett. Amy is a longtime contributor to Across the Fence, and she is with the Vermont Department of Libraries in Bellows Falls. Also with me is Scott Murphy. Scott is the director of the Milton Public Library in Milton. Welcome to you. Now, I know it's great to have you both with us, and I know, Amy, we're going to start off with you.
Yep, I am. So I have Tuesday by Neil Gaiman. This is a great book for your 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, maybe even a little bit younger. It features, of course, the cutest animal in the world, a baby panda.
Yep.
This is a picture book about Chew, whose dreadful secret is that when he sneezes, bad things happen. So he goes to the library with his mother, and there's book dust in the air. And he goes to the diner with his dad, and there's pepper in the air. And each time there's this little frenetic moment of, nope, not going to sneeze this time. And each time he pulls his goggles down over his eyes, and you brace yourself. And in the end, the whole family goes to the circus, and there Chew sneezes, and you get this amazing picture of everything in town going cockeyed. So what the youngest will really enjoy is that there's a great deal of detail about all the animals in these pictures. There is an elephant on the trapeze, for example, and that's going to be really fun. And every picture also has a snail. The story ends with Chew being put to bed and saying good night. Great, great picture for parents.
Excellent.
Well, my first book is called Duck, Duck, Moose by Sudipta Barnum Quailing. It's an excellent book. It's a play off the original Duck, Duck, Goose game for kids. Moose is a loving, happy-go-lucky guy who keeps breaking into Duck, Duck's plans to make a party. And it turns out in the end that the party is actually for Moose. But it's great warm themes about friendship and forgiveness, and the illustrations in the book are bright and detailed, and they actually tell the story itself. You can actually sit with your child, who, whether or not your child can read or not, they can actually follow along the story with the illustrations alone. So it's a great book.
That's terrific. I love the title.
My second book is also by Neil Gaiman. It's called Fortunately the Milk. It's about the adventures of a father who has to, his children, the mom of the family has stepped out for a conference and left watching the children to the dad. The dad has run out of milk. He has to go down to the corner store to find milk. He comes back. The children have waited for hours, according to the kids. And so he goes down to the corner store for some milk, and he comes back and has these wonderful stories about all his adventures that he had along the way. It's filled with pirates, aliens, time travel, a little bit of something for everyone. It's one of those stories that the adults can get something out of as well as they're reading it to their kids. Great illustrations as well. So, great book.
Gaiman,
yes.
All Gaiman, all the time.
That's right.
So my next book is Flora and Ulysses by Kate DiCamillo, and I was talking with a friend about this, and she said, do you really like Kate DiCamillo? Not everyone does, you know, and I said, yeah, I really do. So this features a cynical, world-weary 10-year-old, Flora, who's kind of fed up with her mother, who writes romance novels and is a very flowery, emotional kind of person. Flora reads comic books, and she was always looking for a moment to save the world. So when a squirrel is vacuumed up by an enormous vacuum cleaner and then spit out, possibly dead, she goes and performs CPR. And somehow the squirrel, Ulysses, has been transformed into a super squirrel.
Wow.
So you just have to take it with a grain of salt. But I love that there are little comic strips throughout, because the squirrel's life is represented by comic strips, and also that the squirrel types and conveys his thoughts through things he leaves on the keyboard. Just quirky and individual. It's a chapter book, ages, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, and up. Something to share with your adult friends too. Why not? So I also bought Primates, which also has a graphic novel theme. So in fact, it's all comic strips, and this wonderful green and brown. This summer we're doing a summer reading program theme in Vermont libraries that has to do with science. And Primates is actually the story of 3 female scientists. And I think most of us have heard of 2 of them. Diane Fossey, who studied gorillas and went into Africa and sat patiently watching them and documenting their family life and the structures, discovering so many things that men scientists before her had not been able to discover. So Fossey is one of them. Jane Goodall and her work with the chimps, you know all about that tool using. And the third is a woman named Baruti Girekados. I haven't quite got it, I'm sure, who went to Indonesia. All 3 of them were encouraged by Dr. Leakey, a noted anthropologist who worked in the Olduvai Gorge. All 3 of them made life-changing discoveries for women. This is not a huge delving, it's a children's book, but for anybody who wanted to go further, the biographies are given in the end. And I think it's a very powerful message that just by sitting alone in the woods, you can discover things that have an enormous power in the world.
And the fact that they're women is important.
And the fact that they're women, yeah. Right. So it's Primates and the author, Jim Ottavani.
Well, my next book is called Radiance of Tomorrow by Ishmael Bia. It's an excellent book. It's his second book. His first book was actually called A Long Way Gone, and it was his autobiography about growing up as a child soldier in Sierra Leone.
I love that book.
Excellent book as well. This book is a novel. It's a fiction book, so it's a little bit a step away from his usual work or his previous work. It's a novel about community, history, the strength of the human spirit, people coming home after the war, and how they build community following this, the ravages of war. So it's it's an amazing book, and the way that he uses language to describe things is different than we would as English speakers, because he has multiple languages that he speaks. He's able to. He talks about things like the sky, the earth, the village itself as sort of living things. And it's just an interesting look at descriptive language, his characters, what makes and breaks a community, I think, is mostly what this book is about. It gives a good look at the culture of Africa, healing, healing as a community, I think, and it's a really important theme within the book.
Yeah, it's a unique perspective.
It is, and it's an excellent book. He does an excellent job. It's a fun read, actually. I mean, it really, just that use of, just for the language alone, I think is a good reason to actually read it, so.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, I've got sort of a takeoff now to review that is based on one of the classic English novels. So the classic is Pride and Prejudice, and the takeoff is Joe Baker's book, Longbourn. So in sort of an upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey kind of way, this is a look at what happens to the servants. So we know, most of us, either through the BBC or through movies or through actually reading Pride and Prejudice, the story of the 5 girls and their mother's insane drive to marry them off to a man with property, and how it plays out, what is happening downstairs. And I love this story. It's very thoughtfully written. You're reminded of the sheer drudgery that it took to support a household like that. So somebody is washing those muddy skirts when the girls come in from their quiet walk down by the brook. And somebody is dragging the coal and the wood in. Somebody is drawing the water. Somebody is feeding the hens and collecting the eggs and making the syllabub. You know, it is incredibly time-consuming. And at the same time, there are strains in the countryside. So the soldiers, when you see Wickenham posted in the village and then moved on, what about the other soldiers, the lesser soldiers that support those soldiers? So this is a romance It is faithful to the original, but very much about the lives of the individuals in the kitchen, if you will, the kitchen and the stable. I'm seeing a lot of book groups do it, and I can understand why, because it's rich and rewarding. Completely different language than what you're talking about with Ishmael Beah, but so satisfying to read this story.
Nice.
Well, my next book is actually called The Martian by Andy Weir. It's not normally something I would have picked up, but...
you told me you read everything.
Yeah, right. I wish. It's actually a great story, a sci-fi, hard sci-fi story. I generally do enjoy survival stories, books about people who are surviving in extreme conditions. Well, Mars, the ultimate extreme condition. It's about a NASA astronaut who's marooned on Mars. There's some campy humor in it that breaks up a lot of the technical sci-fi stuff in it. So you're reading about, the main character is actually a biologist, so he's talking about how he's actually able to survive for a year and a half on Mars. And so there is some technical discussion in it, and how the people back on Earth are actually sending out more spaceships to go save him, things like that. So it's really good. The humor in it is excellent, and it really breaks up the story well, because there is a building tension throughout the story towards the end of the book, and I don't want to give anything away with the ending. So
so you won't?
No, I won't. But it's an excellent book, and I think you know, it's gotten rave reviews on Amazon and whatnot, and thousands of people have read it already, and it's only been out, you know, a month. So
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book. So.
All right.
Excellent.
So I want to make sure that we also talk about young adults and books to keep them reading. I really worry about that age 14. Boys in particular, what's going to be that next book that gets them enthusiastic?
We're a tough crowd.
You are a tough crowd.
Right.
So the book I'm thinking about is Bomb, The Race to Build and Steal the World's Toughest Secrets. So certainly the atomic bomb was part of my vague awareness growing up. How are we going to convey that story to the next generation? And this book totally does it. So Gary Scheinken went back and looked at primary source documents, and he's basically telling three stories. Harry Gold, Soviet spy, American who spied for the Soviets. J. Robert Oppenheimer, maybe the nerdiest nerd ever, who headed up the project and did all the science, you know, from splitting the atom to what kind of uranium, heavy water, all those issues, to putting the bomb up on a tower in the desert and exploding it so the scientists could see that it did actually work before they tried it out. And then the third story, which was completely new to me, is the Norwegian resistance. So a guy named Knut Hakeled, who was dropped into Norway on skis. He and a small group snuck up on a fortress where they were making heavy water. So that was the way the Germans were going to get the bomb. They were going to build the components, and only by taking out this fortress could the Americans and the Allies slow them down enough. You know, seat of your pants stuff.
Great.
Cloak and dagger. Fabulous. So that's The Bomb. Most libraries, particularly school libraries, bought it because it's on the DCF list for last year. So it's definitely out there. And even if you just dipped into it and read one story, I think that would grab you enough so you'd want to read them all.
Excellent. Well, my last book is called Cutting Edge Therapies for Autism in 2011 and 2012. This is Autism Awareness Month, National Autism Awareness Month, as well as National Library Week. So within National Library, or within the Autism Month is the National Library Week.
Perfect time to go to the library and take out this book.
I agree, absolutely. The new edition of the book does come out this month. I just wanted to mention that before I get into it. But it contains contributions from many experts in the field, and it covers a variety of therapies, models, ongoing research that's going on, and evaluation methods. The spectrum is so large. The autism spectrum is so large, and parents, I think, and caregivers are having a tough time figuring out what's right for their child. This book is an excellent book for that. Rather than offering just descriptions of each possibility, the authors will discuss how and why these therapies can work for children. a portion of all the proceeds for this also go to the National Autism Association.
Nice. I'm
which
just
is a
going to
nice
jump in here
part of
because
it
we
as
have about
well.
30 seconds left. My pick was
sorry.
Wild, From Lost to Found in the Pacific Crest Trail by Cheryl Strayed. Great story of a woman who's going through a crisis in her life. She's in her 20s, decides she's going to hike this trail, similar to the Appalachian Trail or Long Trail, and just how woefully unprepared she was for what happens to her. And there are a lot of twists and turns, so I don't want to give too much away, but it's a good read for someone who's thinking about maybe escaping their life for a little while. Now, to get a list of all the books we've reviewed this afternoon, you can write to the Vermont Department of Libraries, 109 State Street in Montpelier, or you can call the department. The phone number is 802-828-3261. I want to thank you both so much for coming on and giving us some great ideas on what to read.
Thanks for having us.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.